Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Waiver Wave. I am feeling under the weather, got my tissues here, and it's not just because I played against Calvin Ridley this week. It's also because I'm sick. It's the East Coast, and we are going through a crazy temperature change, and because of that, I am home. A little bit of cold cannot keep me from giving the people the waivers, so let's get started right away. A guy that I had in the waiver wave last week who ended up being big and will be the number one waiver priority this week. Tyler Boyd had a big game. If A.J. Green is out, which we don't know the status of A.J. Green, he becomes a top wide receiver, maybe in that wide receiver 2 category. I believe that offense is good enough to carry a wide receiver 3 from here on out. Reminds me a lot of Devin Funchess last year. Went from the number 2 receiver to a guy that you could start every week. So Tyler Boyd is my number 1 fantasy ad. Number 2, Calvin Ridley. Now, the reason why he's number 2 is because he's available in not most leagues, 44% owned. But if he's available in your league, use that number 1 priority. Pick him up right away. I'm talking right away. Right now, even with a quarterback that's as overrated as Matt Ryan, a guy like Calvin Ridley can really add to that offense. 3 touchdowns last week, a shitload of targets. He's becoming one of the guys that if Julio Jones is double-teamed, Calvin Ridley is going to have a field day against number 2 corners. Another guy on the list, Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin continues to do nothing but produce. In his last 5 games, Chris Godwin has 98 yards, 111 yards and a touchdown, 41 yards and a touchdown, 56 yards and a touchdown, and 74 yards in a touchdown. His 16-game pace over that time, 74 catches for 1,216 yards and 13 touchdowns. That is a wide receiver that you definitely want to own. If you're saying, oh, but what if Jameis Winston comes back? In his last 2 games, Chris Godwin got peppered with targets from Jameis Winston as well. Jameis Winston just as likely to throw it around the field as Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Chris Godwin is definitely a wide receiver to own. Another wide receiver, Geronimo Allison. Geronimo Allison continues to get targets in that Green Bay offense. He was on the waiver wave last week. He's on the waiver week again this week. If you do not have him, pick him up. He is a number 2 receiver in an offense that could support 3 receivers that are fantasy viable. Geronimo Allison needs to be owned. Christian Kirk is another guy. Shout out to Lamb from VM. You know, that right there. Shout out to him because he's been talking about the connection between Josh Rosen and Christian Kirk, who came up together and have a lot of rapport together. And now Josh Rosen named the starter. Christian Kirk is the number 2 receiver. Backup quarterbacks love number 2 receivers regardless. They have a built-in connection. I think Christian Kirk gets a step up in that offense. The same with Ricky Seals-Jones. Quarterbacks, specifically rookie quarterbacks, love their safety blankets over the middle of the field, and he will be just that for him. Ricky Seals-Jones in a weak tight end pool is another pickup if you need tight end help. Sticking with the tight ends, Dallas Goedert caught 7 of 7 targets in Carson Wentz's first game. And a lot of people are going to say, hey, well, Goddard is a backup tight end. He just had a good game. If you look at the way that the Eagles used him in that formation, they lined him up in the slot opposite of Zach Ertz, which forced a linebacker on one of those players at all times. Any of those players against a linebacker is a mismatch. Dallas Goedert, in a very weak tight end year, more weak than usual, and it's usually very weak, has the ability to be a tight end from here on out, as long as Alshon Jeffrey is out. I think if Alshon Jeffrey comes back, then all of a sudden those wide receiver options look better for Carson Wentz. But as long as Alshon Jeffrey is not playing, and he has not been cleared for physical contact yet as of Tuesday, Dallas Goedert is going to be a tight end that I'm going to want to start in most of my leagues. On the running back side, Buck Allen. Yes, Buck Allen. I said it. 2 years ago, everyone loved Danny Woodhead because the Ravens passed the most to their running backs. Now Buck Allen is in that role, and his coach cannot stop saying great things about him. He's being targeted. He's being used. He outsnapped Alex Collins yet again. Buck Allen, if he is not on your team, pick him up now. A streaming quarterback for the week, Case Keenum. He plays against Kansas City. That offense has been the talk of the town, but that defense, on the other hand, they've sucked. And you can't really blame them. They've been playing with a big cushion, but that is really good for opposing offenses. Case Keenum loves to sling it down the field. He will continue to sling it down the field. For more from the VM guys, check out youtube.com/veteransminimum. Also, check out the podcast on all places you can listen to the podcast. SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all that. Go check it out. And until next week, I'll give you the wave. You just got to ride it.
I can fly now, Phoenix through the sky now, lighters in the sky now, looking like it's mine now, dancing in the devil's kitchen, know he's on the ones and twos, abuse a booth like uncles do, then dunk it like